So our panel is, let me invite onto the stage, if it is possible, Chief Sikombingo. Is he already? Yes, Chief? We are blessed to have you around, Chief. If you could maybe just take a seat there. I'm going to ask the panelists to come up. Eddie, do you want to come up? Eddie Cross, Sekuru Eddie. Sekuru Eddie Cross. And thank you so much for your very informative presentation, which I missed, but I hear everybody's talking about it, and hopefully you'll get to share some of the nuggets. Tanya Mazoe, is Tanya here? Yes, Tanya, please do come up. And Brian Mukudzavu. Brian Mukudzavu, thank you. Brian is the tech man, hey? Tanya, you can sit anywhere where you want to sit. Okay, I'll sit in the middle. So maybe Brian, you sit there. I'll sit in the middle there. Right. So what I'm going to suggest is that we start with the chief to give us 8 minutes at most, because we are pressed for time. But you'll get more time as we get into the conversation. So our panel list, I'm sure you've been briefed. We are going to be looking at building national consensus, continuing the theme that we had in the morning, and drilling down as much as we can on the. Oh, one more chair. Okay. No, I think there's a young man that we can abuse. That's a good thing with having young men around. You know, I must say, Bishop Kadzianike, for me, this has been such a blessing. Sitting this morning and feasting on what the Prof was saying, I hear Eddie was amazing. My sister, also, I call her sister and mother, Olivia. I've read a book. I think I'm the only one in this group who's read your book, actually. Read the book, beautiful book, and I can boast also she's been on my show. We had a wonderful time. So what we will do is we're really hard pressed for time, so we want to extract as much as we can from you in 5 minutes, each of you. Let's say what would really be beautiful is to knit a tapestry of what's been happening in the morning and up to now, and hear the highlights of how we build national consensus from the presentations that have been made here. We'll start with the chief, if we may. If you could lead us in the conversation in the next 8 minutes in terms of how you see the challenge of building national consensus from where you sit, because at the end of the day, building national consensus on nation building involves everybody. It starts from the bottom right up to the bottom, so everybody is involved, and would really love to hear your take on what building national consensus looks from where you're sitting. So over to you. You are free to talk while sitting, or you can come and stand here, Chief. Over to you, Chief.
Thank you. Let me just stand. I still got the strength to stand. Thank you so much for this honor to meet such great men and women as we try to build our nation together. I think I'm enjoying what I heard, and what I can contribute is this. Let me start it from this point. The angle of spirituality that is God-centered. In the communities, in the villages, really there is need. And I want to take the opportunity on this platform where there are bishops and pastors, evangelists, who are ordained to do that work. Really, there is a Macedonian cry out there for spirituality. If ever we can build a foundation for a stronger society, for a stronger Zimbabwe, for a stronger Africa, we need spiritual men and women, spiritual young people who fear God, because we are challenged. Anything else will be to no avail until we build a people. I usually say Jesus never built temples. He built people, and the people built temples. So that is for us, you and me, bishops, pastors, lay people. In the villages, there are people who have visions. Where I come from, there are people who dream. Vast of gold down there. There's gold. Some homes and houses are built on top of gold. But for lack of knowledge, it goes and, no one is exploring just like that. I enjoy this part because I think of Joseph. He was a dreamer, and to his family, he was a nobody. But to King Pharaoh, he was an asset. I remember I have two brothers who came to me and said, I had a dream. Can you please call somebody so that we explore this place that I had a dream? And he was told in the dream, you can never finish that gold. Even if you carry in trucks and whatever, you can't finish it. And by the end of the day, we just laugh at him and say, okay, joke of the day. But Pharaoh didn't do that. He followed the dream, and he saved his country and other countries. Therefore, as we build together this African continent, I think we need to somehow to give a listening ear. Many times we talk too much and never listen to anyone. There are people out there who have things, like we were shown. Who could ever, any of us here, who could ever think of that, that building, that thing, and, Nobody. But there is a man who has done it. To me, he is a challenge. And thank you, Prof, for recognizing him and advertising him so that no one is left behind. No one is left behind. We should go together. I challenge you, if there are investors amongst us here, please come. We have oil reserves. Right there in Lower Gwel, oil reserves, gold reserves, and diamond reserves. If we are not proactive, then foreigners from I don't know where, they'll come and exploit. And we'll be crying like the Prof was saying, crying out, but we are sitting on resources. And we need you people who are, if it's in the mining sector, let's try and complement government effort. In the mining sector, in the agriculture, you name it. They are professionals. And professionals, as you are professional, but when you come Kuma village, be down. If you come professional, now. What does he want? I heard the Prof when he was presenting it, said there was a sacred mountain. Yeah. It's also, Africa has a religion. And that to them, that mountain is sacred. And if I want any project on that mountain, I would call the priest of that mountain, who's the chief, who's the village head, and say, okay, Mr. Priest, your mountain is sacred, but we want a name for you. So tell us the way forward. if we are to appease the spirits, tell us, and we do that. Because, villagers live longer. They won't die tomorrow. So, old habits die hard. They're there. But with giving them information, working with them, I think we can achieve. In Shona, they say, "Rumeri mwari kombichuru." You can't surround that big anthill alone. You surround it. You need other hands. You join hands, and then you surround it. Therefore, I'm saying, come, let's we work together. I'm seeing projects here, as the prof was showing us. There is, animal husbandry there. There's agriculture. There's also this fishery. There's mushroom. And we have people who are trained to come into the villages and help. We are ready and we are calling, especially in my area. I'll show you places where there's diamond. And to prove a point, this dreamer, he dreams. Says, I dreamt that there's something here. And when you do a physical check, you see pegs that were put, I don't know, maybe in the time of Cecil John Rhodes. Yes. Where there is oil, we see some pegs. Lower Guelo is, it's full of pegs all over. Wherever you go. Because I hear the gold belt passes through that place and it goes. Therefore, I'm inviting you to join us, come to our place, visit our place. We go places, we show you. But now, thank you very much, especially the church. The church is now playing a role, and I'm enjoying that. Church. But now you are coming up, and we are waiting for you. You are welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chief, our king, isn't it? That's what we agreed. So there it is. I mean, for me, the takeaways there is if we're going to go to where he is, which is where 67% of the Zimbabwean population is, if not more, is we need to humble ourselves. We need to understand that we can't leave anybody behind. They are the people that are sitting on the resources, and we need to understand the things that are dear to them in terms of respecting certain shrines. And I think the name of the church is coming up pretty strongly. The church has a role to play. But I don't know about you, but the prof challenged me this morning about, us Christians who are completely cut off from our tradition and where we come and where we come from. So I want to see how we knit that tapestry. I'm going to call now Tanya. Are you Gen Z or? This is the beauty of this, that if we're to build a nation, national consensus emerges from a conversation that involves everybody. Every voice matters. And every voice must be given a place at the table. So we're looking forward to hearing what your input is. A very important input. And I tell you why it's important. It's important because you are the one who's going to inherit the mess that we have created. So we might be messing up and making mistakes and that kind of stuff, but this is your country in terms of you're going to be around here longer than most of us. So it's very important that your voice comes out and comes out very importantly in terms of how do we build a future in which you have a bigger stake than all of us here. So over to you, Tanya. You can stand up, you can sit, depending on what you want to do. 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes, please. Thanks.
Distinguished guests, leaders, afternoon. My name is Tanya Mazoe, and today I'm going to be representing the youth, Gen Z. It's an honor to contribute to this vital discussion on building a common Pan-African and national vision through diligence in leadership. I stand here this afternoon representing my generation, aka Gen Z. Building a vision requires the coming together of all generations involved. Good leadership identifies and acknowledges that we are not only building for the here and now, we build generationally. A continental and national vision requires the leadership of both today and tomorrow to implement and achieve sustainable and impactful goals through unity. We build for the now and the future, and a consensus is not achieved when a generation is left behind. Today, I want to explore how we can bridge the gap between the divided generations, which are those in leadership today and the young people. Before diving into the core of my presentation, I would like to provide a brief overview of generational labels to set the stage for how to bridge the generational gaps so that commonality and a shared vision can be achieved based on understanding the people involved. So at the top of the chart, we have the baby boomers, born between 1950 and 1964, followed by Generation X or Gen X, born between 1965 and 1979, followed by the millennials, born between 1980 and 1994, then Gen Z, born between 1995 and 2009, and finally Gen Alpha, born between 2012 and 2024. These generational labels merge from a sociological research and popular media. But where do we stand today in the context of our leaders and those who will follow? In other words, the predecessors and the successors. Those who lead today primarily consist of the baby boomers, Gen X, and a small part of millennials. And those who follow are the millennials and Gen Z. This is us, the young people, a generation that is detached from its roots and identity. But how so? Gen Z and millennials in Africa have been overly exposed to many cultures, specifically the Western culture through technology, especially social media. This has caused a warped version of our identity. We are diluted. We don't know what it means to be Zimbabwean, let alone African. Our godly values and principles have been diluted too, so much that religion has become a mere aesthetic or a hashtag, while our way of living lacks integrity, respect, and a true reflection of our faith. We are disconnected and lagging behind in the national and continental vision. At this pace, it's concerning what the future holds for our nation and Africa at large. No identity in Pan-Africanism, no identity in our own country, and no identity in our faith creates barriers to unity and a shared purpose. But I believe the key, the ultimate tool to combat this disengagement is at the heart of our theme today: diligence in leadership. To bridge this gap, it takes the participation of both leaders and young people. Leadership has a role to play and a position to take, which I believe includes educating the youth on Pan-African and national vision, re-educating the youth on true godly values, involving the youth in leadership and decision-making through opportunities and encouragement, and communicating the vision so we walk as one. To achieve this, leadership must diligently educate themselves and learn about their successors, which will help them rally the youth for maximum support and participation. To effectively connect with the younger generation, leaders must shift from focusing solely on demographics, which look at age, income, education level, to understanding psychographics. Psychographics delve into the values, attitudes, interests, and lifestyles of individuals. It's about understanding what drives the youth, what their passions are, and what their concerns are. By aligning leadership strategies with this take, leaders can better engage and inspire the youth to be part of a common national and continental vision. For example, while demographics might tell us that Africa is the youngest population in the world, with 60% under the age of 25, psychographics reveal that this generation seeks purpose and meaning, often through entrepreneurship, creative expression, and social impact. So leaders must then tap into these aspirations by providing platforms for innovation, mentorship, and community engagement to unite the youth around a shared vision. But it is important for us not to forget that charity starts at home. While we extend our vision across the continent, we must also ensure that our own house is in order. This means that as leaders and youth, we must work together within our own communities and the nations. We must fix our own national issues within our own countries, even as we work on Africa as a whole. African leadership must understand that the journey to a unified Pan-African vision begins one country at a time. It is a few of us who rise and follow without a nudge. But most of us need you, leaders, to hold our hand, to teach us, to help us, and show us the way. And to the young people and young leaders who are in this room today, or those who may be watching or listening, to build a Pan-African and national vision and achieve consensus, it takes our active cooperation, support, and involvement. It requires us to intentionally and diligently rise above the disconnect and the lag, because together with our pioneers, visionaries, and leaders of today, we are one people, one nation, one Africa. We are a family governed by unity, integrity, God-centered spirituality, moral values, peace, stability, and a future-forward mindset. Together we are better. Together the future is safe. And together the vision lives on. Gen Z is a proud generation that is difficult to lead. We are proud and arrogant, yet so ignorant. I ask that you do not give up on us leaders. Meet us where we are and educate us. As I conclude, I want to emphasize on the theme of this conference, diligence in leadership, building a common Pan-African and national vision. I believe it's not just a topic of discussion, it's a call to action. The generational gap we face today, marked by the disconnect between our current leaders and the youth, is a challenge we must diligently address if we are to realize the vision AFReG has set forth. So let us remember that the journey towards a unified Africa, one which no generation is left behind, one which consensus is built and achieved, starts with us here in this room today. By bridging the divide, by engaging each other at all levels, by accepting our differences, by fostering a mindset that says, I am Zimbabwean, this is my Zimbabwe and my Africa. This is our Zimbabwe, our Africa. Together with God's guidance and our collective support, the vision of a transformed Africa into a premier continent can be realized. Thank you.
Wow, wow. She deserves a standing ovation, doesn't she? Wow, wow. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you. You may sit down. You may sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a voice that cannot be ignored. Tanya's generation is about 60% of our population. It's a voice that cannot be ignored. It's a voice that cannot be wished away. It's a voice that cannot be silenced. It's a voice that we ought to listen to because it's a voice that has a bigger stake into the future than any other voices that you might hear. So Tanya, thank you so much for that very eloquent presentation. We will get an opportunity to engage with that. Brian, you are not Gen Z. What are you?
Just learned today I am X.
X. Brian, it's your. Do you want to? I think if you stand up there, it will be lovely. Actually, 5 minutes. Tanya was very good with time. I'm going to be watching you, Brian. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Just a reminder how we build national consensus, continental consensus. The Prof challenged us quite strongly in the morning. We've got a huge assignment, but I think each presentation attempts to chip away at the challenge that the Prof offered this morning. Brian, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Just a minute. Mayam Chen, nice to see you. And I hear the book is finally out. I saw the draft. Which year was that? 2018? It was 2018. I need 2 copies. I'm not too sure where the copies are, but it's nice to see you. And Della as well. Great to see you. Right. So I think for me, so you see me, I'm in a tracksuit, so it seems like everyone is dressed nicely. It's because there is the Olympics, right? Okay. And also, well done to, if you look at the Olympics, Zimbabwe did very well. We had 2 guys in the 200 meters, right? And the guy who won is, for the 200 meters is a Tswana, all right? Tebogo, right? Okay. So Africans, that's why when it comes to running, that's the only time I start to see the Olympics. When they are doing whatever is fencing, I don't watch that, right? So because we are always running, Africans, we run and we walk. We are good at running and walking. That's why nobody else can beat us. If you see at that lady, she walks 6 kilometers per day to go and fetch water. Right? She walks again 6 kilometers to go and fetch firewood. By the time she dies, she would have carried 7 elephants on her head. Yeah. And whatever she produces, right, the price for whatever she produces, she makes at most about 6% out of the value chain, if ever she makes any. Try to think about cocoa and the chocolate that we eat. We don't make anything. It's a ton of cocoa cannot buy 200 grams of chocolate. You look at her trying to get an ID for a child. She cannot get an ID. She cannot be employed. She cannot send any even of her kids to school because the ID is not available. The same child again, the same lady, when she wants justice, that justice is denied because she has got to walk to go to a court. She doesn't even have the money to go to a court. And remember, she does not have an ID. And also, she's financially excluded because she stays in rural areas. So whatever produce she's going to make, she cannot do anything. So whatever she wants to do, she has got to walk. She has got to run. So Africans, we are either running from, running to, or walking. That's what we do as Africans because we want to run and to go to services and we cannot get these services. So for Africans, it's a marathon of life. So it's either we are very fast or we do marathons. So the marathon of life for Africans is access to healthcare. We don't have access to healthcare. If you look at doctors, we don't even pregnancy. If you look at the mortality rate, it is too high. Education as well, we don't have education. Water, we don't have. Market access, we don't have market access. So for Africans, it's a mile. If you look at it, it's a marathon. So that's why you see me dressed like this, because I'm in a marathon. I was born running, and I think I'll keep on running. Not because I want to, but because it's for survival. In Europe, they run because they want to. Here we run because I've got to survive. So if you try to look at our society, all those areas try to look at our society in terms of media, right? Gen, now, is it Alpha now? I think we went to Z and then we came back to A, right? Gen Alpha. You look at the media, who is giving voice to the media? And how also are we influencing the media? So if you look at all those sectors that we have got there, but outside there, one of the key things that we can have as an asset as a nation is technology. So how are we shepherding the assets? How are we also shepherding and making sure that the spheres of society are? So as we move forward, here is a clarion call, where these words are famous for everyone. Those who survived the exile are back in the province in great trouble and disgrace. The walls of Jerusalem is broken and the gates have been burned with fire. Our society is broken and it needs repair, and we need to bring in governance. So if you look at technology now, technology allows us to then to be able to bridge that gap that is there. When you compare a rural mother, chief, You are talking about resources. But the technology, even to see and to mine those resources, they are not there because you are in rural areas. When you're talking about education, educating them to know the resources that they have got, how do we educate them when they cannot even be on the internet? They are excluded. So what's happening is most of Africans are going to be excluded. So people say technology actually brings about democracy, but actually technology can actually even increase the divide. If you look at AI, artificial intelligence, and biases that it has got, it's actually going to create a bias, and a lot of people who are going to be left behind, and Africa will be left behind. And if you look at right now, social media, where people think they think on that social media, they actually don't think because somebody is setting a Eurocentric agenda where our youths think they are thinking, but they don't think. So what is stopping Africa from getting on this bandwagon of technology that has changed everything, right? How are we going to have a digital bridge? For me, it's a digital bridge with you, Tanya. Right? How do we create that? It cannot be created because, number one, we have got these barriers that we need to deal with. First one is literacy and skills. Can we start to train? The other barrier that we need to do is affordability. Technology is expensive. Cell phones are expensive. Internet is expensive. Electricity is actually not available. So how can we talk about governance? Because when we start bringing in technology, even corruption is dealt with. Try to think about the passport office. You would go to the passport office at least 3 times, and the first time was just to go and get your form, which you take home, and then you come back to get a number to then come in the queue. But right now, if you go to the passport office, 30 minutes, I did it. That's September. The passport was out. I didn't have to pay anyone. We can do that, and technology will actually be able to deal with even corruption. Relevance of the technology that is there, the content, what content are we putting there? Safety and security, pornography. How are we going to protect Gen Alpha when it comes to pornography, security, theft? How do we deal with that? So as leaders, I see we have got our honorable here. This is my cry to you. This is what I'm asking of us to do as national leaders, for us to be able to bridge that gap and start to govern our people better, including even elections, the way that they are going to be conducted, even when it comes to water, how are we going to use it effectively? The first thing is we need to work on digital infrastructure. I'm calling for leaders for digital infrastructure, internet to access, and also where we are going to do fostering community development. So, finally, I'll end with this. If you look at that picture, that's a picture of a child who is saying, it's actually pointing at you and me to say, thank you for unlocking my potential. Thank you for unlocking my future, because you invested in technology and we can govern our societies much better. Thank you.
Ryan, you have amazing, powerful, and in 5 minutes, so the power that technology has, and as the Prof said in the morning, technology is a resource, perhaps now the most powerful resource that we have, and you're presenting to us as a resource that has got the power to bridge the gap between the young and the old as we build our nation and build the continent. That's very powerful. And the challenge that you leave to all of us from that young man who's saying thank you, but we have not yet done it yet. We need to build the infrastructure. So Brian, thank you so much. Sekuru Eddie, are you ready? You made your presentation in the morning. If you could maybe, for those who were not in, give us a few nuggets, 3-5 minutes, and then we engage going forward, continuing with the theme of building national consensus.
Yeah, I won't repeat anything I said this morning, because if you didn't hear it and you weren't here, then it's your own fault. They did record it, and it will be available on social media. I'd like to deal with a couple of issues that I feel very strongly about. my Mochena raised a very important issue this morning. My ancestors arrived here, my great-grandfather arrived here in 1877 as a missionary. And in 1893, a tiny group of white men took the country by force. And after the first Chimurenga, we dominated the country. And for the next 80 years, and you were quite right, our culture, our religion, our language, our law dominated. We paid no attention to the indigenous culture of the people. In fact, the missionary influence was actually even stronger from a cultural point of view. It was regarded as being unchristian to use drums in church, you know, those sort of things. And then we fight because of the stupidity of the white leadership, who didn't accept the fact that 2.7% of the population can't rule the country indefinitely. We have a civil war, which of course we lost. And I was in Rufaro Stadium the night we got our independence. I was sitting behind Indira Gandhi and just 6 meters away from Robert Mugabe, whom I knew well. And the old Rhodesian flag came down and a new flag went up. And a completely new team of people took over power. And they had not had any experience in government. They had been fighting a war. And they came out of the bush and they were in government. And it was really, it has been a rough ride. But my worst nightmare about this country is, Professor, if you walked into our parliament dressed like that, our speaker, Jacob Mudenda, would throw you out the door. You know that? You know that? Because he's wearing African garb. The standard for our parliament is a tie and a conservative tie and a shirt like this and black suit. That's the standard. And we insist on it. And if you go into our civil service, that's how they're dressed. Now, when I went to India a few years ago to a conference, the one thing you knew is that you were in an Indian continent. They were Indians. And they looked like Indians, they behaved like Indians, and even though they had been dominated by European settlers for a long time, they were Indians. And if you go to Japan, what I loved about the Japanese who were competing at the Olympics, they were wearing Japanese clothing, even with the Chinese. And you come here, and and I went to Parliament first time in 2008. I was sitting on a green leather bench in a Parliament that looks exactly like Westminster. And the opposition was here, and the government was here. Baba, when I grew up in Umznyatini, south of Bulawayo, Chief Sigola was my chief. And I was allowed, as a 12-year-old child, to sit in a dari, not in the ring, but behind, okay? And I'm telling you this, it was a meeting that was conducted with dignity, and the decisions related to the community made in the dari were enforced by everybody, because they were consensual in character. Now suddenly I'm in an African parliament, I'm an African MP, and I'm sitting on this side and the opposition and the government is there. I wanted to throw stones at those guys. And instead of making decisions by consensus, which is the tradition of Africa, we adopted without even thinking the European, Western, democratic culture. And it's not African. And even today, I see the GNU in South Africa might save South Africa, because it's forced those guys to sit in a room and get a consensus on the way forward. And instead of fighting each other and expending your energy and vitality on pursuing different goals, and like these young people in Chirungwiza on Thursday who were opposing the issue of title deeds, even though it was in everybody's interests. The other thing which I want to emphasize here, Chief Mambo, he's chasing me. I think we have neglected your institution. I would like to see the chiefs put in charge of rural administration. I would like to see the chiefs running the councils. I would like to see the chiefs approving the budgets of the councils. And I would like to see everybody who lived in the rural areas being accountable to you, including the farmers and including the commercial farmers. You take responsibility for all these areas and you set the culture. And young people, when I see some of you, I really weep, because they look like Americans. They wish they were Americans, and they're not. And what I would really love to see, my grandchild, I'm very proud of my kids. My youngest grandchild speaks English with a Shona accent. She calls her grandmother Gogo. And my kids don't see color at all. Because we made a decision as a family many years ago that we were not Europeans anymore. We are Africans. And if we're Africans, we've got to start taking on board the culture of Africa. And so I think very strongly, a nation without vision, Trevor, is a nation doomed to failure. I want to tell you this ZIG thing, okay? There is no future for the ZIG while it's in a wrestling match with the US dollar. We need our own currency.
Thank you, Eddie.
And if I was the president, I'd ban the damn US dollar.
Thank you, Eddie. I think at the center of what Eddie is basically saying is how the West interrupted our development and how we've failed to take on the baton at independence. We're focused on the wrong things, and those wrong things unfortunately are setting us astray. Prof, you started the provocation this morning. We'll give you 5 minutes to end the provocation and end it in a manner that addresses the issue that Bishop raised, which is, what's the solution? I think we need to zero in on that. What is the solution? Because I think right now, as members of the audience, get involved, instead of complaining, let's find the solutions. What are the solutions? Prof, you outlined, you did give some solutions, but I will right now ask you to delve into the solutions in the next five minutes. You outlined the problems. What are the solutions?
Okay, I'm on. You have to punch something. That's self-empowerment. That's important. I like to mention that the solutions call for radical change of behavior and of thinking, because we are living in a competitive global environment, and the forces are complex and strong. And they are very resolved. for Africa to provide two things: cheap labor, cheap resources, for the global capitalist economy to work. There is no repentance in sight from those global forces. The only way for Africa is to go on the path of an economic war for economic liberation. And what I share with people is that it's going to take us 10 times the force we used for political liberation to gain our economic liberation. All right? So if we don't organize ourselves to sing our war songs and march forward, nothing is going to change. So that's one. The second one is, which is an example, our need to think for ourselves is huge. Now, with your permission, I do not wish to underrate everything we have shared, but baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X has nothing to do with Africa except for the global impact. I'm not a baby boomer. I was born within that period, but I did not return, my parents did not return from the World War to be, involved with the women, and then I came as a result. That was in America. So where I am as an African is not where Americans are. But through social media, where Americans are is globalized and advertised as though it is universal. So in that loud environment, I have to excuse myself from the global arena and say, excuse me, I need some time to think for myself. And then I come and look at my own journey as an African, the forces that have been at play, and the generations that have been at play in Africa. And then identify those generations and see where our youth are from the African side and also from the global side. And then to see what we need to do differently so that our youth are Africans, proud Africans, who have the capacity to compete in the complex global environment. America cannot define our generations for us. So my third point is very simple. We have to learn to pay our bills. We have to learn to pay our bills. The problem we have that stands in the way of execution is that we go out to borrow money to do the things that we really need to do. And the money we have that we should use for development goes out through corruption. So we lose about $500 billion as a continent, and then we borrow $750 billion. All right? And as a result, there is no way the African Union can say no to France and the United States at the same time because they pay our bills. So they have all these nice ideas, but it takes a phone call to say, please, can you stop what is going on in Kenya? Because it is not in the interest of what we think is good for Africa. The phone is down. If you don't comply, you will not survive in your government. If you want to dance to your own music, you have to pay your bill. And associated with this is a serious misunderstanding of leadership across the world, where we see leadership more as administration. The difference between leadership and administration is this. In administration, you are given a task and allocated resources. And as a good administrator, you deploy the resources to accomplish the task efficiently, and your boss says, well done. That's not leadership. It is important, but it's not leadership. Leadership is identifying a problem, which is a lingering problem, a systemic problem. No reasonable person will choose to give his or her life to that problem because it is life-consuming, it is huge, larger than life problem. Leadership says, I'm going to tackle you. And leadership also says, I am going to develop the needed capacity and resources to tackle you. No leader in the scriptures lacked the understanding that to fulfill a God-sized vision, you have to pay your bills. Nehemiah, on the way to Jerusalem, was already raising resources that would be needed to rebuild the broken walls. That's leadership. David, God said, no, it's not going to be you. Fair enough, but I will develop the capacity for my son to be able to do it. Okay? So until Africans understand leadership as a call to do what ordinary people will not want to do, a call to build necessary capacity to accomplish the task, as opposed to going to beg for money and compromising on the vision. That is the leadership we need. I pray we make that change.
Thank you, Prof.
Let's pay our bills.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Wow. Okay, then. That's, again, a challenging perspective right there. Pay our bills. I like the difference, the clarity of the difference between a leader and a manager. And, let's think for ourselves. In the first instance, we would like to get the audience involved. But before doing that, shall we have the members of the panel, are there issues that have been surfaced that you would want to engage with? What's your take on the Prof's challenge about the generational divide? Do you want to respond to any of that? No. Okay. So Tanya, are you sure? You must fight your ground, Tanya. You must fight your ground, Tanya. You don't want to Brian, any reflections after the Prof and after Sekuru Edi has spoken? Are there any reflections? Do you want to share?
Sure. Thanks very much. I'll just come to Prof.
As briefly as possible, Brian.
When it comes to paying bills, one thing that I've seen is we like the rights, but we don't like the responsibility. Our system runs about 98% of all the local authorities, right? But people don't pay rates, they don't pay bills. It has actually been inculcated in us not to pay bills and not even to pay taxes. You mentioned that the West will want us for the cheap labor, but I just want to come in as a technologist and say no. They won't even want us for cheap labor because with the AI, cheap labor is going to be substituted. So what they are going to be using is just our resources. So an opportunity is for us as Africans to rise and start to innovate and come up with technologies that solve our own problems. Like 53% of all food that is produced in Africa is wasted, goes to waste. And we import something like 150 billion. Can we just focus on preserving our food using technology?
Thank you, Brian. The Chief, is there anything you'd want to add, as briefly as possible, in response to what any of the panelists have said? The Chief.
Thank you. Sekuru said, mentioned something about the whites by then, really disturbing a lot of it for us Africans. And now, I'll pick an example. I think one thing they started and is still going on, the chiefs were the custodians of the people. You know, the people pay taxes, whatever they will pay to the chief or to the king. Then they introduced this council thing, you know. And even now, this council still, you know, if really the system had survived, chiefs would be on a very, very good level. Now, because of that, you know, you don't leave a soldier behind unless he's dead. If you leave him, he's injured and he's alive, you leave him behind, they will pick him and they will extract all the information,
Sure. And
you're all dead people.
Yeah.
Therefore, I think the system should incorporate us so much that we are alive and we are part and parcel of the, you know, the whole system, and it will serve us. Why am I saying this? Because what's happening right now on ground? You just hear there's a Chinese company mining somewhere. From where? How? And you have no one to ask. And no one is going to answer that question. Therefore, you know, this divide and rule thing they introduced by then is still existing amongst us. But I'm saying we're trying to create one Africa. Therefore, let's revisit the whole system and, you know, reshuffle the whole thing. And we'll see some good results.
Yeah, I suppose, like the Prof is saying, this is tough work. It doesn't, a manager is not going to do this. A leader is going to do this. And I think for me, the challenge the whole day really is that the challenge we face is unscrambling this egg and starting from scratch. I don't know whether you are as challenged as I am about where we are as a continent, as a people, after what has been said throughout the day. Tanya, do any pushback at all from you?
All right, I'll just touch on where I had to communicate using terms that might not seem African. And it just proves the divide that's between us Africans, because we then go to use what is available to us. If you come to Africa in Zimbabwe, if I am to define a generation, what do I use? So as the youth, this is what the leaders have given me. I don't have anything to use. But it's also my responsibility to rise up and now create and think for myself. But where we are today is a result of our leaders. We just follow. You lead, we follow. But we are now getting to a point where we now have to rise up as well.
Yeah.
So we get to a point where we think for ourselves.
Absolutely. I think what we're seeing in Kenya is a rupture. That is because your generation has been ignored and the generation feels disconnected, like you say. There is a disconnect. We might be argue about the definition of who you are, but you get a certain mindset that is as a result of the environment that you live in, the social media that you consume, and that kind of stuff. Shall we ask members of the audience who want to engage? There is a mic there. We have 5 minutes. I was given 5 minutes. I think, yeah, at the back there's Bishop here. I can see 3 hands. There's Dr. Chada here, and yeah.
My question is...
Let there be short questions. Can you imagine me giving an instruction to my bishop? I'm enjoying this.
Just a quick question to Prof. Della. History. What part does the teaching of history have in this whole conundrum we are looking at?
Respond that as briefly as possible, Prof.
Yes, I will appeal for you to relax on the time pressure because this is an important part of our engagement. I'm not an organizer, but if you rush the final interaction, we'll lose too much. Anyway, to the question. History really helps a great deal. And the lack of knowledge of history is what is used as a tool of manipulating you to accept other narratives. For the African to go into history, if you really went into history and looked at Africa before penetrations from Phoenicia in the 9th century BC, and then the Assyrians in the 8th and 7th century BC, you will see an Africa that is strong on its feet. In the 7th century BC, there was the United Kingdom of Cush and Egypt. And if you read your Bible, I think 2 Kings 19, you will see the mention of Tirhaka there, King Tirhaka. He ruled over Egypt and Cush. They penetrate outside of Africa to Persia and other regions. That ambition is what caused the Assyrians to come back and attack the Egyptian Cushitic kingdom. So for 100 years, Africans ruled Egypt, black Africans, I mean. Now, go quickly beyond that to, let's say, 800 AD, or more precisely, 711 AD. The Moors, which included Africans, Sahelian Africans, went into the Iberian Peninsula, conquered parts of Portugal and Spain, and ruled that region for 700 to 800 years. That is the reason why in Europe you have black Moors as Africans. And if you read your Geneva Bible from the Geneva Bible in the 16th century AD, which will be 1561 Geneva Bible, the phrase used to describe Africans is black Moors. All right. So the rulership of Europe ended in 1492. So when Columbus was going on his expedition, he had to go through West Africa because they knew about navigation. And Columbus and other Portuguese sailors and Spaniard sailors were just now freed from the Moor control that they had been under for 800 years. So they were very much aware of the importance of power, resources, exploration, and expansion. Just like the Africans did to them, they are also going to conquer other lands. All right. So when you are looking at Europe's engagement with Africa, they did not come to Africa because Africa was weak. They came to Africa because the strength of Africa meant there was a wealth to be explored. So when you read history for yourself, you have a completely different perspective on Africa's place in the global scene. Yeah. I have to say this.
It's difficult to stop a professor, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I have to say this. It is necessary for Africa to contribute to global development. It is necessary. Because God has placed the human capital and a lot of the wealth for the world in Africa. It's not only meant for Africa, it's meant for the world. And if you go back to when the Israelites were leaving Africa, going to Canaan land, God was clear to them Exodus 12, right? And 3. Where you are going, let me put it in a paraphrase way. Where you are going is a land of milk and honey. But milk and honey do not create economies. You need silver and gold. So before you leave, make
Take
sure
from
you
the
ask the
Egyptians.
Egyptian women for silver and gold. Without Africa, Israel will not have an economy.
Thank you, Prof. I think it's the fundamental point. You still want to go on, Prof?
I have not finished. Keep in mind, I paid my way to come here. So for 400 years, there was globalization, and Africa provided the labor force for global development for 400 years. Okay. It is forecasted that it's going to happen again. 2050, the workforce of the world is going to come from Africa. 1 out of every 5 human beings will be African by 2050. 1 out of every 4 Christians will be African by 2050. It will be the most youthful continent on the planet. And that youthful force is the workforce for tomorrow. So if we can invest in this generation so that they are skilled, they can work at a higher level, Africa is going to shape the world, just like you are seeing in the Olympics and you saw in the European Championship. It's European names, but Africans having fun. More of that 2050.
Thank you, Prof. I think fundamentally important is the question that you've asked, Bishop, which the Prof has responded to in a very strong manner, that we don't understand our history. We've been taught European history and American history. We need to understand and read more about African history. Dr. Chada, and then there's...
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Very quick. So I think we must determine some of these things. We can't change everything, but some things we can do. And one of the things for me is that we have to rewrite African history. And I think AFReG, maybe we should make a decision, raise funds, and start rewriting African history.
Wow. Pam, pam, pam. We need to rewrite. Yes, Dr. Chad?
Thank you. Comment for Professor. I totally agree with you. Our generation are complaining to our youngsters that they don't know anything about the Liberation War, yet we never made a plan to teach them. There is a disconnect. History. No plan to rewrite the history, to write the history of the Liberation War. But we are still complaining to them. Now my question, is it a coincidence that corruption is rising up on the graph as a result of the degradation of values? Values are going down and corruption is going up. Is it a coincidence? Thank you.
There's a millennial. We're going to park that question, and if there's somebody who wants to respond to it, there's a millennial. You're a millennial, or Gen Z? No, at the back, right at the back, right at the back.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a millennial, and proudly so. So I just wanted to make a comment and possibly a recommendation. So my first comment is to Sekuru Edi, how he talks about the history of his ancestors coming to the continent. The thing that we really need to discuss is that during that time, the separatist agenda was really hammered into the society, going to where people lived, how people could operate, the jobs people could get, the social standards that people could attain, whether you could self-actualize or you couldn't. So that separatist agenda has now spilled into even society today. You find people north of Harare can't mix with people south of Harare. In Bulawayo, if you come from the east, you can't mix with people from the west. If you're from the older generation, you can't mix with the younger generation. There's just so much segregation. Shona versus Ndebele, Hutsi versus Tutsi. It's just such a mess that exists on this African continent. And rightly so, Bishop says that we need to rewrite our history because our history is so filled with lines that demarcate that because you are this person, you grew up in Bulawayo, you are a woman, you are black, you sit in your corner. You cannot mix with anyone who is outside of your demographic. And I think that's the thing that really kills the one nation, one Africa, one people. Because if you're saying we are one, but you are being identified as, oh, you're from Matebele land, you can't thrive in Zimbabwe, it's a problem. And that's something that needs to be fixed. The second thing is, it's nice to meet up. It's really a great initiative. But what are the steps we're going to take after this conference or after this seminar?
That's an important one. And I think the Bishop has already indicated concrete steps that need to be taken. There's another question there. I think as we're dealing with the question, the Prof, do you want to respond to Dr. Chada's question? Values are going down, corruption is going up. Is that a coincidence? Or it's a logical development?
It's not a coincidence, and now I will submit to the MC and be brief. It's not a coincidence. I think that Christianity, excuse me to say, is part of the problem and part of the solution. Because we have religiosity without spirituality. The two are different. So when it comes to religion, there's no competition. We have the wealthiest pastors on the planet. Not even TD Jakes can challenge some of the Nigerian pastors in terms of their wealth. So the church industry is working very well. Sunday, the best dressed women on the planet, they are in Nigeria, Lagos and Abuja. Very expensive clothes. So the church industry is working well. The problem is Monday to Saturday. We are okay on Sunday. Monday to Saturday, we have not translated our spirituality into ethical principles that will inform life and conduct, leadership and governance. So we have no clue how to move from the devotional inspiration that we get from Scripture to practical, workable, ethical principles that will promote integrity, effectiveness in leadership and governance. Hence, we see explosion of Christianity. We see a devaluing of values at the same time, which is a contradiction. And hence, we also see corruption.
Wow, that's a big challenge there. Yes, Madam, I think we'll take two more questions. Oh, the hands are rising. 1, 2, 3, 4, and oh, I see Olivia, Dr. Mchena is 5, and then we stop. Please, a sharp and short question so that everybody gets to ask. Yes, ma'am?
Thank you very much. The Bishop talked about the need to raise finance, and I understand agriculture. With agriculture, it's a big deal. Since communal land is the most in Africa, and there's no collateral there. So is it practical to collateralize our agriculture and raise finance using the minerals that we have? Is it practical to expect that if we know there's a gold in Gweru, for example, and then we don't mine it, a portion of it, and we use it as collateral for agricultural activities or in other activities? Or there will be a gold rush and then it won't be controllable? Is there a way to control that?
And then otherwise Dr. Mchena there. Please take note, anybody wants to respond to the question, panelists, So there's an issue about. Okay, Sekuru is going to answer to that one. Yes, Dr. Mchena, your question?
Sorry, mine was going to be a recommendation. Before we rewrite the history, let's read those history books that are correctly written. For example, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, which will tell us what Prof was saying. Then secondly, maybe the question to the younger people. What do you need? You identify the problems, but what do you need to discover yourselves and be yourselves?
Brian and Tanya will respond to that. Yes.
Mine is just a small question to the chief. I just want to know, how can we now, you said we should appease the spirits, and here we are Christians. There are some of the things that I cannot do, but how can, I really want to be educated, how we can do it by appeasing, but still not affecting my spiritual life.
That's a powerful question. That I don't know if we're going to be able to unpack it today, but it's powerful. It's the elephant in the room, actually. Yes,
Thank
Madam.
you very much for the presentations. My concern is on Africa paying our bills, especially concerning France. I'm a student, I am still studying some history. If I am not mistaken, France is taken quite a chunk, in Africa. And maybe, if I am not even mistaken, they are still taking a chunk, from Africa. So I'm not so sure. And even the things that were coming to Africa as aid, to me, they don't seem to be aid. Because what I know is they were taking resources from here and going with them. And then, then when they are bringing whatever the aid, it's in quotation marks, aid, but otherwise they will have taken the labor, the resources, and the everything. So I'm wondering which bills is Africa going to pay?
Sounds like some reparations there and illicit outflows that are taking place. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just to say to the organizers, since the morning, I have been so much enriched. Thank you so much. I have no regrets sitting here the whole day. My comment, probably question, is to Prof. Dela. Talking about African theology and African Christology, I see also the issues were coming back, just now in terms of what we need to do. There was a statistic which was provided in the morning, 700 million Africans are Christians. So I'm thinking, how do we work with our theological seminaries in Africa in terms of enlisting this mindset? So by the time we graduate, our students, who are then going to be pastoring those 700 million, there is that transformation so that we are not offering education which is misaligned to the real issues that are on the ground. Thank you.
The last question right at the end there, that's going to be our last question of the day. And the mic is coming to you.
Thank you very much. I do think we are dealing with a myriad of problems here. The first part is, I don't think we need to rewrite history as such. There's a lot that has been going on in terms of refocusing and understanding the African past right from the late 1940s. It has been an iterative process all the way, right? The problem is not in the rewriting. It is about what do we do with the knowledge that we know, or that which we should aspire to know about the past. That is the point. If we know that we had ancient, powerful civilizations that were very technologically compliant, like the civilization that built Great Zimbabwe, The question is, what are the values and the systems that worked in that time that enabled such a sophisticated engineering to happen? What is it that Africa needs to actually get to that point where we are globally competitive? I want to argue that the greatest problem is that we are actually still struggling to recover and to find ourselves ideologically after the decolonization of our countries all over the place. We are the continent that is doing the best that we can to divide each other and to actually ensure that no one among us rise and do anything significant. The greatest problem then is disorder. The second one is this. What is the role of religion today? What do we want to achieve as churches in Africa? We have got the most bizarre practices from our churches, the most bizarre globally. This is the continent where people drink petrol in church, right? This is the continent where people eat grass in church. This is where people buy maize cobs for $10 because they are told they are anointed in church. What is it? What is the goal of Christianity and what do we want to achieve on this continent? The third one, Trevor, is that we've got a very contrived, politicized understandings and reiteration of developmental goals. History, as taught in the schools, is taught with a view to kind of project a particular triumphant political image of those that are in power. You look across the continent, you'll be shocked. That which has become patriotic history. Where is the role of environmental history, medical history, economic history, and all those sorts of histories, technological histories in the curriculum at high school? So we have a disconnect between our aims and what we are actually practicing. Yeah. I will stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You asked three big questions, eh? Let's see who wants to respond. Sekuru, shall we start with you on can we collateralize rural land? Is that possible without losing it?
Yeah. Freehold tenure was a Western introduction to Africa. And at independence, all liberation movements reversed freehold title in Africa, all of them, without exception. In South Africa, they've talked about it, but they haven't done it. And it's in South Africa, it might survive if for no other reason than there's a large political body which will defend freehold tenure in South Africa with their bodies and their blood if they're challenged. And you know what I'm talking about. And it is a major issue. 18% of the whole world is freehold tenure. Only 18%. So it's not an issue just for Africa. And that 18% of freehold title produces over 70% of all the food in the world. During the existence of the Russian Federation, what do they call themselves? Soviet Union. The Soviets collectivized agriculture. When the kulaks opposed Stalin and wanted to retain the family farms that they held, he eliminated them. So the greatest genocide in history. He simply wiped them out. They don't exist anymore as a people. And the collectivized agriculture of the Soviet Union did not feed the Soviets. They left small family plots available to individuals in rural villages. And 80% of the Soviet food came from those plots. In the case of China, where under Mao Zedong, they attempted to collectivize agriculture completely and bring it under state control, sometimes violently. In 1 year, 30 million people died of starvation. 1 year. And the Chinese were not self-sufficient. And then you get Deng Xiaoping. And he doesn't change a great deal. But he changed the situation for rural peasantry. He gave them control of the land that they held. And he required that anybody who wanted to take land from rural peasantry had to pay for it. And China today is probably the greatest agricultural powerhouse in the world. It's the biggest producer of everything you can name. And that has been purely simply because they made a simple change in the way in which they administered land in the rural areas. Freehold title may not be the solution. In Zimbabwe, we took freehold title away from the white farmers, not because it was a land reform program, but because the white farmers and their workers had voted against ZANU in 2000. It was a purely political program.
So what's the solution, Eddie? What's the solution?
They made the mistake of thinking that if we replaced white farmers with black farmers, we'd get the same output. It's not true. Output declined by 70%. What the new government of Zimbabwe is doing under the Second Republic, and it is a commitment of the president, is he's going to give all farmers who have settled on former commercial land, that's about 160,000 men and women, he's going to give them long-term leases. And the lease is being drafted. Ziambi and Tuli are leading the thrust on that. It has been approved. We are negotiating now with the banks to recognize it as collateral. And I don't see any reason why they should not accept that. Is Mboweni still in the house?
No, he's
okay,
gone.
I'm sorry he's not in the house, because what I want to say to him is that we are considering regularizing village boundaries. In 1992, Professor Rukuni led the Rukuni Commission. And one of his recommendations was that in the communal lands, that every village area, and they know their boundaries, every village area would be registered, and the village heads would be given responsibility for administering the land, and that they would regard it as their own. If we are able to achieve those two things, the one thing is we've replaced 6,000 commercial farmers with 180,000 farmers on the commercial farmland. So we've got to survey all that land. All that has got to be surveyed. It's a big job. But we are ready to do it, and we're using modern technology to do it. And if we do that, then we'll be able to fund agriculture properly.
Thanks, Sekuru. A big question asked around the ancestral issue and Christianity. How do we do it? Mambo.
Thank you. For your information, I'm also an ordained elder in the church. And now, yes, the issue is leaving no one behind. And Paul says, you people, I see, really, you are worshiping, but my interest in this one. He never said, no, guys, no. The approach, mommy. Right. The moment, most of them, these traditional leaders, are really traditional leaders. And you come to them, Christianity to them is something else. And the moment, you belittle them, then there's chaos. Yes. And usually I would say, he is the spirit, not the dead one. It's him. Yes, he is the spirit. Yes, tasvika munzvimbo yenyu toombera ndimi baba venzvimbo tiudze zvekuita. But because they're holding on to what he's saying, the only thing that we have is land. And the moment it's taken away from us, we are nobodies. Therefore, the Sekurus out there are holding on to land, and they want to be recognized. From down history till date, it is their fathers who kept that land until now. Therefore, they need that recognition.
Yeah.
So,
I heard you, as you're talking, that there's a tension between the Mambos and the councils. Does that get in the way of national consensus?
Really, it does so, very much.
How do you resolve it? What's the situation?
Right, maybe. Like I said, he touched a bit of it. I think some Sometimes we are told, you know, when we put this one and this one, it shows, it means more power. But on what? On what? Because right now, if I had that power, I would go and close every bar in the shopping centers. Every bar would close it. And I would not give anyone who's applying for a stand and then he's saying, I'm going to build a bar. I'll say no. But I don't have that power. It is the council who just gives. And every shopping center, it's a death trap.
Wow, the chief is actually, Mambo, you're raising a huge social issue, which is the preponderance of bars and drugs in the rural areas, which is eating away on our fabric. And you, as a chief, you don't have the power to say no to that. I mean, that's huge. I hope the organizers of the conference are taking notes in terms of how we resolve that. Then the young people, what do you want? What do you want? Let's hear from you. The question has been asked. What do you want for you to feel empowered, to feel recognized?
All right. Thank you so much for the question, Mama. Young people want and need a lot of things, but at the core of those things are two things, and I'll share them really quickly. Yesterday, I overheard my brother, he's 10, he was having a conversation with his friend, and his friend was saying, I don't know what I'm good at, and I don't know what I want to become. And my brother said, how can you not know or think that you're not good at anything when you haven't tried everything? So we cannot become what we do not know. So the first thing will be now exposure. I get an opportunity to speak to the less privileged, and when we are talking about career guidance, they mentioned the careers we all know, but there's so much more we can become, and we cannot become that if we do not know. So young people, we need exposure. The second thing is opportunities to do and become. We have a lot of workshops on finding your purpose, your passion, what you want to do when you grow up, but after that, how do I get there? I need an opportunity to do and become. Not only talking about the ones who are privileged to become, what about the ones that can't become because they do not have the resources or funds to go there? So those are the main things that young people need. Exposure, so they choose what they want to become. There's so much we can be. And I am where I am today because I was exposed. I wanted to be something that I just knew from listening to others and, the status quo. But I stepped out of the status quo because I was exposed to other things. And it is a privilege for me to then be able to become that. So that's what we need, exposure and opportunities to become.
That's a cry which touches my heart, considering the significance of this generation. I'll come to you, Prof. Brian, what does your generation want apart from technology?
I will not talk about the Gen, is it now Gen Alpha for the technology part, but I just want to come back, if you allow me, Trevor, to the issue of land and its ownership. I think if you look at the issue with the land and title, it's something that we imported. As Africans, land means identity. So when I meet you, Trevor, when you say to me, Brian, I say I'm Masi. So my land there is associated with my village. That's where I come from. So it's about identity. Then as we moved on to where we now had title deeds, it became a property. But where we want to go right now is where it becomes a capital asset. So my sister was asking, what can we do about collateral? We actually don't need title. People don't want title deeds. What they want are rights that are protected to the use of the land. So title deeds for me, if you look at Waterfall in South Africa, where Africa More is, that is all leases. It's land that is leased, a 99-year lease, but see the amount of investment that is going in there. So we don't need title. What we need is to protect the right to the use of land.
Interesting. Prof, you wanted to say something? We hold on to it. Prof, you want to say something?
Yes. I will say something and then answer a question on the universities so that we save time. But when it comes to the issue of ancestors, there is difference between worshipping ancestors, praying to them and seeking benevolent actions from them, and respecting ancestors. I think that our Christian theologies need to understand that our ancestors who have been good in our communities need to be immortalized in our memories so that their great examples will be followed. Now, when I come to prayer, in relation to the ancestors, I wouldn't want to talk to the ancestors, but I can talk to God mentioning my ancestors. All right? So, and with my subjects, we are on the land. I can mention our ancestors who have given their lives to get this land, who have made these specific contributions, and ask God to help us to build on their examples as a legacy for the next generation. If we have that kind of respect for our ancestors, we will not be disconnected. All right? Americans respect George Washington. They respect the military people who gave their lives, and they remember them. They go and place flowers on their tombs as a national holiday. So you can show respect without worshiping. Okay. So from that, I want to go quickly to the question on the universities that need to ensure that we have these new ideas on theology, etc., go into the heads of the schools. Well noted. That's my comment.
Wonderful. I know I'm under pressure to round up, and I'm going to round up by asking us to, in less than a minute, for the panelists, less than a minute to sum up your takeaway. Any final thoughts? Tanya, you're the youngest. I'm going to give you the honor of starting. Any final thoughts? Tanya, any final thoughts?
Thank you. Final thoughts for me would be to just ask our leaders to really help us. We need you. We cannot do this alone or even think for ourselves. We need you to set the pace. So for young people, we are very much innovative, open to new ideas, even open to leadership. But it's just about relating with us on that level. So we get on board and we build together. We want to build with you. We want to continue the legacy. But we need you to hold our hand and we become together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tanya. Brian, your last minute?
I want to respond to Pastor Kadzianike and say, Pastor, your request for history, I think we have got a guest in here who can help us. The man who spoke last, he can stand up. He is the dean at Rhodes University and a professor in economic history. So he can help us with history. So we are sorted.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for me, when it comes to how do we then dealing with governance, I believe problems are best solved by the people who face them on a day-to-day basis. When it comes to innovation, let's innovate as Africa, as ourselves. Even to look at medicine, even some medicines have got less than 60% effectiveness when it comes to African genome type. So let's go and start innovating as Africans, and we can do it. Our kids spend time now on the internet. They are being exposed. So let's expose them as well to African problems. We can change this continent.
Fantastic. Sekuru Eddie, I'm going to skip you, Prof. I'll give you the last word. Sekuru Eddie, your last minute. Thank you, Eddie. Prof, I'm going to respect the mambo. So, Prof, over to you. Your last minute, Prof. Thank you so much for paying your way to come and enrich us.
My pleasure to be here. Let me say that there is hope. And I will encourage all of us to be sure that we have a strong AFReG movement in Zimbabwe. And we don't need to wait till the next conference. We should create digital communities to continue these conversations. And we should be evangelistic about this. In other words, we should let people know there is a new era for Africa, and we are working at these specific things. And to say that we are proudly Pan-Africanists because there is no other way for us to dream of a new future without being united.
Fantastic. Your challenge for me, I mean, there's a lot of challenges that you threw to us is We've decided that Swahili is going to be our language, but we're learning Chinese. That says a lot about who we are, isn't it? Mambo, you're going to have the last word as far as the panelists are concerned.
Thank you. Somebody said the most richest place in the world is in the graveyard, because people went there with their heads loaded with information, with this and that. So let's not be part of that. May when the master returns, may he find us doing so. Thank you.
Amen. Wonderful. Thank you. Is done. Thank you, panelists. Shall you give them a big pom-pom for your, thank you. Again, to hand over to, sorry, Zwanzi Garaipasi.
Trevor and your panel, thank you so much. We wish we had a lot of time allocated to this panel, because there's so much that we needed to talk about. But I'm pleased that there will be a continuation of this sort of forum as we engage. I think Bishop have got plans in that regard. Yeah, it's been a wonderful day. I have gained much more than I had anticipated. At this point in time, may I ask our chairman of AFReG Zimbabwe to come to the podium and give us his closing remarks and also do the benediction. In the meantime, we'll also ask our speakers to receive some tokens. Thank you, Bishop.
Put your hands together for Dr. Gomera for a wonderful day that he has been able to drive this wonderful meeting together with all of us. Please just bear with us just for a few minutes so that we can bring this to a conclusion. And I want to say thank you to my wonderful committee that did this great job to put this together. Bishop Kadzianike, thank you so much. He's such a wonderful man in terms of serving. You are amazing, amazing. He realized the bishop has too much now on his plate and just said, Bishop, I can be in your office to serve and do this thing. You've done a great job. There's so much. I'm so excited in my spirit. Because time is gone, I will not speak so much, too much, but I just need to bring this to a conclusion. First of all, I want to say thank you, all of you. You are now AFReG alumni, all of you who have attended. It's not by Guinea, it's by attendance. You are AFReG alumni. And you are joining a huge, big family of AFReG alumni across the globe. We are not the only ones. We are just, I just have this thing in me since I've attended AFReG. I attended AFReG 4, 5. We are supposed to do the 6th one ourselves. So I've been forcing to keep on hosting AFReG in Zimbabwe so that we're able to do AFReG 6 and do it properly. Probably in a resort place with 2,000 plus guests. And we are capable now. With this kind of alumni, we can do it well. We have a very formidable board. Dr. Chadaize is one of our board members. Dr. Mboweni is one of our board members. Honorable Chikukwa here is one of our board members. We have a very powerful board members. Some of them are not here. A group of very illustrious Zimbabweans who can help us take this to the next level. This year, I've been chock-a-block right on top of my head. Too many things that I've taken. But for me, I can drop everything else and make AFReG the number one thing because of what AFReG can help us do in Africa and in Zimbabwe. I think from here going forward, we will create an office. We should be able to create an office. And the prof said we must pay our own bills. And I know we are capable of paying our own bills to make sure we have a running office so that we don't do these things per event, so that it becomes And I'm glad I have a very wonderful executive chair who will help us do this thing. We have a very good, powerful secretariat, very powerful secretariat. There are a few things that I noted, as I was sitting there and I was thinking about the radical behavior change that the professor spoke about. Those are some of the things we need to carry on. And I was thinking of how Africans share their food. The biggest problem we've had is a guest comes and begins to shove the spoon to share, even to the father of the house. That has been my biggest problem. Whilst I love sharing with guests, guests don't come and begin to dish. That's not African. That's my problem, which I want to speak to our African presidents who are right now in Zimbabwe, who are coming to Zimbabwe. Why do you allow foreigners to share the food? It's un-African. In Africa, we don't even stand on, because we hardly kill each other in our normal Africanness. The mother sits, the father is there, and you know which portion goes to daddy, which goes to mom, which portion is sacred, and you know what I'm talking about. But we have had Europeans come, we have our cake, they are now sharing the cake to us. The Chinese are now coming, like the chief, our Mambo was saying. Eddie, that has been the problem, my friend. And in order for you to do that, obviously you must use a gun, you must use some weapon to share the food in my house. It's an African. And we need to challenge that to say Zimbabweans share the cake. And some of our leaders now don't know. They're allowing people to share our cake, minerals that they pay, and sub-minerals. Gone. Can you believe it? They even degrade the grades of our minerals. They are supposed to pay for grade A. By the time they get to the one they are paying, it's grade D. And they think we don't know. We do know. We pray and we know. God have mercy on us. And the other issue, as we look at it as Africans, we have not come to a place of mutual pain. No. Because some of us are eating too much, others are suffering. When you want to say, let's arise together, why should we rise together when I'm full? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, in Nigeria, they have what they call Zugure, the same Zugure we have. A Zugure that dances the most is the one who has no money in their pocket. But when he has money, he doesn't dance. He says, this Zugure is okay. How do we dance together for our own economic liberation when one has already been so corrupt enough to have enough not to dance? So you dance on your own, the rest are sitting. Because you Zugure, you are hungry. The rest of us were okay. Now, that's the problem. We need to answer and begin to come to a mutual pain that I see it in Nigeria, I see it here in Zimbabwe. One person has this whole church to a house. A house. This whole church is somebody's house in Zimbabwe. And this person, you wonder, are you all right? Why do you need, I am telling you, there are people whose houses are as big as this auditorium. God have mercy on our way of thinking. You'd rather make money out of this house and the economy benefit rather than you stay in this house on your own. What thinking is that? God have mercy. Until we come to a mutual pain, we will all arise. Our white brothers, you see them putting on a shirt and socks. It's not that they can't put on expensive. They have the most money. But they've realized that money must circulate whilst they make more money. Do you know circulating money, you make more money, but everybody else is benefiting from your money. We don't think that way as Africans. We think hoarding, and I'm the chief because I have all in my pocket and nobody. God have mercy as we look at these things. So, what did we say? Just a quick take-homes that we put here. There are a number of things here that I would just highlight as take-home.
the issue, the critical issue of common vision has been our key thread in what we're talking about. We spoke about African religion philosophies needing revisit and check on what we are doing. Very critical. That is very critical. Intentional leadership development for establishing a common vision. Very critical. For me, what we need to do is to, number one, identify, recruit, train, and deploy. And what it means is you cannot continue to identify these young gifts, you train them, then you remain in power. No. By developing new talent, it means you are retiring yourself. And many of us, as church, even church leaders, I tell church leaders, I'm looking forward to my retirement at a very nice young age, that I can enjoy leadership from a disposition. We have had a problem of positional leadership rather than dispositional leadership. Do you know dispositional leadership has no boundaries? But positional leadership, I'm bound by the constitution, I'm bound by the laws of being a presiding bishop. But wait until I'm a freelance bishop. I can be more beneficial. But God have mercy on us. So critical, importance of intentionality that we need to do. Current state of political development and economic development that we need to look at. Public-private sector cooperation, that was one of the key important things. How we can then go back and develop our rural places as we work together. Sekuru spoke very powerful testimonies here on things that can be done. Sometimes you have private sector acting like opposition political parties. You wonder what's going on. Let's work together to develop the nation. The church that knows its place. Sometimes the church doesn't know its place. And it's a very big issue. I have fought with SOs, wanting the church to be like a non-governmental and civic society organization. Church is not. Church is not. We are not civic society organization. We do, sometimes we do civic society work, but we are not. It's important to identify that. And sometimes we are then forced to act like one. Once the church does that, it loses more than SLs. You know that? The church loses more. But we do NGO work, but we are not an NGO. And I'm very clear about that. And very, very important for the church to understand. My professor raised a very issue. Prof, over there, the issue is everything and anything that says hallelujah is called a church. It's not necessarily so. Unfortunately, the identity of the church has been mixed with all kinds of issues. Anyone who stands up, put a tie or a collar and say amen. No, anyone can say amen. They are not churches. We know what church is. Everybody knows what church is. Some of those are not churches. In fact, just like our traditional leaders, they have midzimu, and then they have mashavi. Kwavari midzimu is the clean spirits. And the mashavi and the aroi are the bad ones. Isuso tine mashavi egu church. Kune mashavi egu church, professor. Ariko mashavi. We must be able. The problem is we have not done a good job to help the church identify which are church mashavi and which is the true church. And by so doing, we have our people, even bona fide Christians, mixed up. They go to these places, and if you are properly trained, you can't drink petrol and be delivered. You can't buy chibage and think I'm being delivered, or mangwe amfundis, and or mfundis run over you, or suck his manhood in the form of deliverance. Even you are the biggest problem than the pastor, the so-called pastor. But that's where AFReG must zero in, and because we are Bible-based, but we are not religious. Oh, akoma naga, ndataura. I'll leave it there. May the Lord bless AFReG. May the Lord bless all of you. Thank you for coming. Our timing became an issue because of what's going on around, but all the same, I felt so fulfilled Thank you for all of you for respecting this and coming, all our panelists, our speakers, Prof, for investing. You paid your own bills. You are a good African. Glory be to Jesus. He paid his own bills all the way. And when you said it, I was so happy. I said, I'm excused from this man's invoice. He's a good African for paying his own bills all the way from United States and coming. I'm wondering what is Bishop Mkandla feeling right now. He's not here. He was supposed to be a good African who pays his own bills to come to be with us. Friends, this has been one of the most beautiful days in 2024 for me. You don't know what this has done. To our board members, we'll be calling you very soon to really now put together a very nice way forward. Before the end of the year, I've just given a very good conversation to our executive chair we are going to put another show. I felt so bad we didn't do justice to all the issues you needed to put across. So we will have another meeting. Probably before end of the year, God helping us, we must have another follow-up meeting to these pertinent issues. We will also put together a very good package of what we have just discussed, both audio and transcribed one. Okay? We will put it, we have your address, we have your phone numbers and your emails. It will come to you. All what has been discussed here. And we can even do an AFReG platform that we can further get more insight to what we are trying to do. I know we have enough business people here for Africans to pay their own bills. We have enough teachers, historians to make this thing move. May the Lord bless you. It's time for us to honor our guests. Thank you.